The snow fell steadily across the Montana wilderness, each flake adding to the blanket that already covered the ground several inches deep. The temperature had dropped below freezing an hour ago, and the wind cut through the trees with a sound like distant wolves howling. Emma Crawford stumbled through the darkness, her thin shawl pulled tight around her shoulders, offering almost no protection against the bitter cold. She wore a simple gray dress that had once been nice, but was now torn and stained from 3 days of travel on foot. Her shoes, never meant for hiking through wilderness, had worn through at the soles, leaving her feet bleeding and numb. Emma was 24 years old, with light brown hair in a braid down her back, though loose strands now whipped around her face in the wind. She had delicate features that were currently pale with exhaustion and cold, and her lips had taken on a bluish tinge that would have alarmed anyone who saw her. But there was no one to see her out here in the wilderness. Emma had been walking for 3 days with almost no food, just the half loaf of bread she'd taken when she fled, which had run out yesterday morning. She'd managed to find water from streams, but that was all. Her body was shutting down from cold, exhaustion, and starvation. She didn't know exactly where she was going, only that she had to get away. Away from her uncle who'd taken her in after her parents died and then tried to sell her to a brutal man twice her age to settle gambling debts. Away from the town where she had no protectors and no rights. Away from everything, even if it meant dying in the wilderness. Emma had thought death would be preferable to the fate her uncle had arranged. And now, stumbling through the snow with her vision blurring and her legs barely holding her weight, she realized she might get her wish. Through the swirling snow, Emma saw something that made her think she was hallucinating. A light, warm and golden, shining through the darkness like a beacon. She blinked, trying to clear her vision, but the light remained. A cabin. There was a cabin ahead, substantial and solid, with smoke rising from its chimney and lantern light glowing in the windows. Emma's legs moved toward it automatically, her body making the decision even as her mind struggled to process what she was seeing. She had to reach that light. Had to reach warmth and shelter, even if only for a moment before whoever lived there turned her away. The cabin seemed to get farther away with each step, or perhaps Emma was just moving more slowly. She couldn't feel her feet anymore, couldn't feel much of anything except a deep cold that seemed to have settled into her bones. She reached the porch steps, 5 wooden stairs leading up to a solid door. Emma grabbed the railing and pulled herself up 1 step, then another. Her vision was tunneling now, darkness creeping in from the edges. 3 more steps. She could make it 3 more steps. 2 more. 1. Emma reached the door and raised her hand to knock, but she couldn't make her arm cooperate. The world tilted sideways and she felt herself falling. Her last thought before darkness claimed her was that at least she'd die somewhere warmer than the open snow. Inside the cabin, Jacob Thornton sat by his fireplace reading a book he'd read a dozen times before. It was his favorite way to spend winter evenings. Warm fire, good book, and the peaceful solitude he'd come to value over his 32 years. Jacob was a rancher, tall and powerfully built from years of hard work, with dark hair and a black hat he'd just removed after coming in from evening chores. He wore a brown coat over a vest and tan shirt, practical clothing for frontier life. He'd built this cabin 5 years ago on land he'd claimed, built his ranch from nothing through determination and backbreaking labor. He lived alone by choice, having seen too many hasty marriages turn sour in these parts. He figured if he was meant to have a family, it would happen in its own time. For now, he was content with his books, his cattle, and the peace of wilderness life. Jacob was reaching for his coffee when he heard it, a soft thump on his porch, like something falling against the door. He set down his book immediately, alert. Could be a wounded animal, could be a branch fallen from the roof, could be trouble. Out here, you didn't ignore unusual sounds. Jacob grabbed his lantern and opened the door, and immediately felt his heart slam against his ribs. A woman lay collapsed on his porch, covered in snow, clearly unconscious. She wore inadequate clothing for the weather, no coat, just a thin dress and shawl. Her lips were blue, her skin pale as death. "Dear God," Jacob muttered, setting down the lantern and kneeling beside her. He checked for a pulse and found one, weak but present. She was alive, but barely. Jacob didn't hesitate. He scooped the woman up in his arms. She weighed almost nothing, far too light for her frame, and carried her inside, kicking the door closed behind him. He brought her directly to the fireplace and laid her on the thick rug in front of the hearth. She was hypothermic, possibly frostbitten, and clearly hadn't eaten in days based on her gaunt appearance. Jacob had seen exposure cases before, had lost friends to the cold. He knew he had to work fast. He added more wood to the fire, building it up to provide maximum heat. Then he grabbed every blanket he owned and began wrapping them around the unconscious woman, tucking them carefully to trap warmth. He was gentle but efficient, working with the practiced competence of someone who'd dealt with medical emergencies in isolated conditions. Once she was wrapped, Jacob checked her feet and was alarmed to see they were bare and bleeding, her shoes apparently worn through. He carefully cleaned the wounds and wrapped them in clean cloth, then positioned her closer to the fire. He heated water and made a thin broth, something she could digest easily if she woke. Then he settled in to wait, checking her pulse regularly, monitoring her breathing, and praying she'd wake up. It was 2 hours before Emma's eyes fluttered open. The first thing she saw was a ceiling made of wooden beams lit by flickering firelight. The first thing she felt was warmth, blessed warmth, seeping into her frozen body. "Easy," a deep voice said. "Don't try to move too quickly. You've been unconscious for about 2 hours." Emma turned her head and saw a man kneeling beside her. He had a kind face, concerned eyes, and was holding a cup of something that smelled like broth. "Where?" Emma's voice came out as barely a whisper. "My cabin," the man said. "About 15 miles north of the nearest town. I'm Jacob Thornton. You collapsed on my porch. Can you tell me your name?" "Emma," she managed. "Emma Crawford. Emma, can you drink this?" "Just small sips. Your body needs warmth and nourishment." He helped her sit up slightly, supporting her with one arm while holding the cup to her lips with his other hand. Emma sipped the warm broth and felt it spread heat through her chest. "Slowly," Jacob cautioned. "Too much too fast will make you sick." After several small sips, Emma found her voice again. "How did I get here?" "You walked here, near as I can figure. Then you collapsed on my porch." "You're lucky I heard you fall." Emma tried to remember. "Walking through snow, seeing a light, climbing steps. Everything after that was blank." "I'm sorry," she said, tears forming in her eyes. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to burden you. I can leave as soon as—" "You're not going anywhere in your condition," Jacob said firmly but kindly. "You're suffering from exposure and starvation. You need rest, food, and time to recover. When did you last eat?" 3 days ago. "Maybe 4. I lost track." Jacob's expression darkened with concern. "And you've been walking all that time?" "Through this weather?" Emma nodded, then felt tears spilling down her cheeks. "I had to get away. I had to run. My uncle, he was going to make me—" She couldn't finish the sentence, but Jacob seemed to understand. "You're safe here," he said quietly. "Whatever you were running from, it's not getting to you through me. I promise you that." Something in his tone made Emma believe him. She'd learned to recognize sincerity, having experienced so much of its opposite. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet," Jacob said, but there was kindness in his eyes. "First we need to get you properly warm and fed. Then we'll figure out what comes next. But Emma, I want you to understand something." He looked at her directly, his gaze steady and honest. "You're home now, for as long as you need. No one is going to hurt you here, and no one is going to force you to leave before you're ready. That's a promise." Emma felt something break open inside her chest, relief so profound it hurt. "You don't even know me." "I know you're a young woman who fled into a blizzard rather than face whatever you were running from. That tells me enough. Whatever was behind you was worse than death by freezing. No one makes that choice lightly." Over the following days, as Emma slowly recovered her strength, Jacob cared for her with patience and respect. He gave her his bed while he slept in the main room by the fire. He cooked simple, nourishing meals and brought them to her. He treated her feet wounds and made sure she had warm clothing, finding some of his own shirts and pants that, while too large, were far warmer than her thin dress. Most importantly, he gave her space and time. He didn't press her for her story, didn't demand explanations. Just let her heal in peace. It was a week before Emma felt strong enough to sit by the fire in the main room, wrapped in blankets, watching Jacob prepare dinner. He moved with efficient grace around his kitchen, clearly a man accustomed to taking care of himself. "You don't have to tell me," Jacob said suddenly, not looking up from the pot he was stirring. "But if you want to talk about what you were running from, I'll listen." Emma took a breath. "My parents died 2 years ago. Cholera. I went to live with my uncle in Silver Falls. He was my only living relative." "I'm sorry," Jacob said quietly. He seemed kind at first, but he gambled. Lost money constantly. Finally lost so much he couldn't pay his debts. Emma's hands tightened on the blanket. "So he sold me. Arranged for me to marry a man named Cyrus Black, a brutal man who'd already buried 2 wives under suspicious circumstances. In exchange, Black would forgive my uncle's debts." Jacob's jaw tightened, but he let her continue. "I overheard them planning it. I was to be delivered to Black within a week. I had no legal recourse. My uncle was my guardian, and women have few rights in these matters. So I ran. I took what little I had and just started walking. Into a blizzard," Jacob said. "I didn't know there would be a blizzard. But when it started, I didn't turn back. Because going back meant becoming Black's property, and I'd rather die free than live in that cage." "You won't have to do either," Jacob said firmly. "You're safe here, Emma, as long as you need to be." "But I can't stay here forever," Emma protested. "People will talk. It's not proper, a single woman living with a single man." "Then we'll make it proper," Jacob said, turning to face her. "Marry me," Emma stared at him. "What?" "Not a real marriage. Not unless you wanted it to be, but a legal marriage that would protect you. As my wife, your uncle would have no claim on you. Black couldn't touch you. You'd have legal standing and protection. Jacob, you can't just marry a stranger to solve her problems." "Why not? People marry for all sorts of reasons out here. At least this one is for a good cause." "But what would you get out of it?" Emma asked. Jacob was quiet for a moment. "Honestly? Company, purpose. This cabin feels empty most days. Having someone here, someone to talk to and share meals with, that would be something. And knowing I'd done something good helped someone who needed it, that matters to me." He sat down across from her. "I'm not asking you to love me, Emma. I'm not demanding anything beyond basic companionship and partnership. Separate rooms, respect for boundaries, time to get to know each other. But legal protection for you and an end to the loneliness for me. Seems like a fair trade." Emma looked at this man who'd saved her life, cared for her, asked nothing in return, and was now offering her the one thing she needed most: safety. "All right," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you." They were married 3 weeks later by a traveling circuit judge who came through the territory. It was a simple ceremony with just Jacob's nearest neighbor couple as witnesses. Emma wore a dress she'd sewn from fabric Jacob had bought on a supply run, and she felt more nervous than she'd expected. But when Jacob said his vows, promising to honor, respect, and protect her, Emma believed every word. And when she said hers, promising partnership and loyalty, she meant them. The marriage started as an arrangement, practical and straightforward. But as months passed, something shifted. Emma proved to be resourceful and capable, helping with the ranch in ways Jacob hadn't expected. She was excellent with the animals, skilled at preserving food, and brought organization to his previously chaotic accounts. But more than that, she brought life to the cabin. She sang while she worked, talked to Jacob about everything from philosophy to the best way to mend harnesses, and made the space feel like a true home rather than just a shelter. For his part, Jacob showed Emma what it meant to be valued as a person rather than property. He listened to her opinions, appreciated her contributions, and treated her with unfailing kindness and respect. He made her laugh with his dry observations about ranch life and challenged her mind with thoughtful conversations. 6 months into their marriage, Emma realized she'd fallen in love with her husband. Not the desperate, dependent love of someone clinging to a rescuer, but genuine affection for the man he was. Kind, thoughtful, strong, and deeply good, she told him one evening as they sat by the fire. The same fire where he'd first warmed her frozen body. "Jacob, I need to tell you something." "All right," he said, setting down the harness he'd been mending. "When we married, it was an arrangement. Protection for me, companionship for you. No expectations beyond basic partnership." "I remember," Jacob said, "but somewhere along the way, it became more than that for me." Emma met his eyes. "I've fallen in love with you. Not because you saved me, but because of who you are. I understand if you don't feel the same way, and I won't let it make things awkward, but I needed to be honest." Jacob was quiet for a long moment. Then he crossed to where she sat and knelt beside her chair. "Emma, I've been in love with you for months. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to pressure you, didn't want you to feel obligated because of what I did for you. But loving you has been the easiest thing I've ever done." He took her hands. "You came to me half frozen and desperate, and you've become the most important person in my life. You're my partner, my friend, my home. I love you, Emma Crawford Thornton." Emma pulled him close, and they kissed with all the emotion they'd been holding back for months. And that night, their marriage became complete in every sense, born not from arrangement but from genuine love. They built a life together over the years, expanding the ranch, raising 3 children, and becoming known throughout the territory as a partnership that worked seamlessly. Emma became an advocate for women's rights, using her own experience to fight for legal protections for women and girls. And every year, on the anniversary of the night she'd collapsed on his porch, Jacob would hold Emma close and whisper the same words he'd spoken that first night. "You're home now." And Emma would reply, "Because you made it one." Their story reminded everyone who heard it that home isn't just a place. It's where you're safe, valued, and loved. That sometimes the worst moments of our lives lead directly to the best, and that the truest form of love often grows from the simplest acts of human kindness. If this story reminded you that home is where you're safe and valued, please share it with someone who needs hope today. Subscribe for more stories about finding refuge in unexpected places, building families from choice and commitment, and transforming acts of kindness into lasting love. Leave a comment about what home means to you, or about someone who offered you shelter when you needed it most. Together we believe in the power of compassion, the strength of human connection, and the truth that everyone deserves a safe place to belong.